We've had you. Aha, it's your turn. But before we take this thing on a test drive, I want to have a little talk about this bike, because there are a lot of stories about people that do 100 kilometers an hour on this bike and clutch riding and whatever. But I have high doubts on those claims. I have an original 1973 or 74, not sure, folder on this bike. Was delivered to Amsterdam. Pretty cool folder, some nice pictures. This was the original paint scheme. That they did this paint scheme 1 year, the first year, and then it was also available with the speed blocks, the DX model that is. But I want to have a talk about the thing on the back here, specifications. They claim a 95 kilometer an hour max speed range, which I highly doubt. Maybe back in the day they used some tricks, or they, I don't know, they took it off a hill or in the back of a van maybe. But 95 kilometers, I have not been able to reach that. Two-stroke torque induction, I highly doubt the torque. 49 cc's, whatever, 6.4 to 1 compression ratio. And the thing that everybody talks about, 6.25 brake horsepower. So first off, that's engine horsepower. And so not wheel horsepower, you still have some drivetrain losses. And also the horsepower, they don't mention any RPM here, but this thing has a very narrow power band. From 0 to 6,000, this thing does pretty much nothing, and then at 6.5 or 7,000 RPM, this thing pulls like a freight train to 9,000 and then falls flat on its face again. So it's a very narrow power band. That's why I also highly doubt they can reach 95 kilometers an hour, because fifth gear in this thing is almost unusable. You will see in the clip to come, this thing falls flat on its face in fifth gear, so I rarely use it. You can still do 50 or 60 kilometers an hour in fourth gear, which is nice, but 95, I highly doubt it. I challenge people to have a stock RD50 DX that do 95 kilometers an hour. Please let me know on what you did with the bike. So you hear a lot of stories about people that used to drive these bikes in the 70s and 80s, and everybody did 100 kilometers an hour using clutch riding and whatever, doing a kickflip with the carburetor, I don't know. But I can't get this thing anything past 60, because fifth gear, you'll see. So without further ado, let's take this thing out and put it to a proper test. We have the board. I've made some space on the board. I've erased the Dream Plus, which was the Dream with the 18 millimeter, which is actually 20 millimeter carburetor. I've messed up. More on that later. Because the original one was faster and the original carb is back on the bike, so it doesn't matter. So the RD50 DX. Theoretical horsepower 6.25. So 0 to 45 kilometers an hour was in 11 seconds flat, and we did the quarter mile in 31.5. My box is too small. 31.5. We ended the quarter mile at 56.2 kilometers an hour. So let's do the math and see how much horsepower we have on the road. So the calculation with the elapsed time horsepower, it's pretty pathetic, 2.4 horsepower. And with the trap speed method, we get a whopping 1.27 horsepower. So the 6.25 horsepower, take it with a grain of salt, because yeah, it's less than half. To put this thing in comparison, for the quarter mile, this thing is actually right on par with the Comet, which is a 3-speed, 3.6 horsepower engine. It is 2 seconds faster. It's 6 seconds slower than the FS1 and 4 seconds slower than the Dream. Everything else, yeah, that's about the closest numbers we have. So yeah, 6.25 horsepower, it's debatable. So the claimed 6.25 horsepower is a nice number to brag about, but as you can see, in real life, it's a lot less. It's a peak number. Everything below the RPM range, as mentioned, is a lot lower. Anyhow, we do have some extra plans with this bike, maybe to get some extra horsepower or maybe use more of that horsepower in low RPM. We also still have to do a quarter mile with the Solex, with the racing cylinder. I haven't done that yet because it's still getting broken in a bit. It runs really good, so we'll do that as soon as possible. So definitely stay tuned, consider subscribing and liking, and I will see you guys in the next one.